first time customer complaint was, well, a bit of a history. They went to a couple of different shops for a similar problem, intermittent stalling while driving, and it seemed to start right away. The odd time it would take a while before it would start again, so possibly temperature sensitive. The other shops looked at it, couldn't really find anything. One shop replaced the in-tank fuel pump, which on these models can fail and the vehicle remains running, so quite possibly that was a valid repair. However, obviously the intermittent stalling continued, and it got to the point where the car would not start at all anymore. You know, sometimes dealing with intermittents, you are better off waiting until it's a hard fault, because those intermittents are sometimes not easy to catch because it just doesn't act up while it's at the shop. And if a shop rate is anywhere from $65 an hour or more, for a shop to spend time on a problem that may not even surface throughout the day, that's a lot of time, and the money can add up quickly. So in this case though, it was towed in to us as a no start, so it was sitting for a while after it no longer would start, and it was decided to finally have a look at it, and then they towed it to us. So what we do is obviously just go through the basics as well. It does crank okay, so I'm going to show you that part of it, and then we're just going to check for spark. I already know that it is a loss of spark problem, so we're not going to deal with fuel, but this is just a quick show you how and what we do, or what I do here. And I think I have a video about something like this anyways, but I'm losing track of how many videos I have, but so being a new updated video, this might help, and also with my audio commentary. So anyways, here we go. It's automatic, so we're gonna have a starter relay here. So I'm gonna energize the starter by touching this terminal. First I'm gonna turn the key on, and we're gonna check for power on the hall sensor. Be careful when you disconnect it. Just push in on the clip, carefully pull up. As mentioned in one of my other videos, if you're familiar with them, the two outer terminals are positive and ground. So that's the first thing you want to do, is check with a test light. With the key off right now, I can check the ground side. I'll always check your test light first. So one of these terminals, the outer ones, is ground. I happen to just touch it now. The other side is not going to do it. You can see that it's dim, but it's actually back feeding. So what I'm going to do now is check the power side of it. Obviously there's no power here, there's no power here, but when I turn the key on, after turning the key on, I have power on this terminal, nothing on this side. So that tells me the voltage supply and ground to the hall sensor should be okay. I can plug this back in real quick. We should have done this first, check for spark. So key's still on right now. I'm gonna touch my jumper to positive. Hold this maybe 1/8 of an inch. Ideally you want to get a spark at 1/2 inch long, but 1/8 of an inch is good enough for preliminary testing. So vehicle's in park, ignition is on. It's cranking a little slow, but you see no spark, okay? Then what I do is I take a good known hall sensor, and I just attach it to the harness plug, and then I spin the rotor. Okay, this distributor is out of I believe a Gulf with the a 2-liter, because there's only one shutter wheel here. You can see a little wheel here, nothing, 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 and the same wheel again. So I'm not going to get 4 sparks per revolution, I'm just going to get the 1. So all I'm going to do is just wiggle it back and forth like this, and if this hall sensor is good, and the ignition module, which is under here, this guy, as long as that is good, I should be getting spark then. Again, I'm going to put this close to ground, and you can see here, every time the shutter wheel gets past the hall sensor, I get a spark. Okay, and I'm also getting injector pulse, because the injector pulse and spark are pretty much happen at the same time, because the computers is using the TAC signal, or the distributor signal, as a command for the injector and spark. So this vehicle needs a Hall sensor. I'm going to replace it and make this video a little bit longer. I always clean a little bit of dirt away from around the distributor, because when you take the distributor out, stuff might fall in. This one here actually still has a plastic cover here, which is quite rare to see these days. Being a 91 Golf, usually these covers are missing, and it's just the bolt head that's exposed. So that cover just comes off with a little bit of prying. Doesn't matter if you break it off. Again, it doesn't really do anything aside from cover that little bolt. Pop the distributor cap off. Make note of where the firing order is in terms of the spark plug arrangement if you're going to move these ignition wires. Usually number 1 is over here, and you have 1, 3, 4, 2. In this case, number 1 is in the front, number 3, number 4, and number 2. So again, usually it's over here, 1, 3, 4, 2. No big deal, the engine runs regardless, provided that the rotor is indexed correctly, this guy here. And you can see the rotor here with the alignment notch that should fit in here. Okay, so then we need a 13mm to remove that bolt. Okay, before you do take it out, you might want to line it up to top dead center, and you should be able to turn it by hand. You can see me turning it here by hand. On the automatic transmissions, there's a little pointer here that you want to index with your mark on the torque converter, or on the flex plate, whichever it is. So you can see here, I'm going to zoom in, but that's the 0 mark right there, and that's the 6 degree. And again, we're not on number 1 right now. Number 1 is over on this side, remember? But because it's a 4-cylinder, 180 degrees on the opposite side, that's the companion cylinder. Number 1 and number 4 are companion. Okay, so right now I'm pointing at number 4 TDC, and that's perfectly fine to use as an alignment mark at this point. Okay, and you can see the notch in here that signifies it's supposed to be number 1, but it's number 4. I'm starting to think maybe the ignition wires are in the wrong place, but we'll have to see if it starts later. But the fact that we have no spark when cranking, it still verifies to me, or tells me that the ignition, that the Hall sensor in the distributor is bad. So anyways, top dead center, and we're going to take that bolt out now. Sometimes if the distributor is stuck, it's a good idea to spray some WD-40 around it and let it soak overnight. This is the clamp that holds it down. And then usually just a matter of wiggling and rotating the distributor, and she comes out. Make sure to plug the hole here so nothing falls in. That's the oil pump drive down there, and then you can see the intermediate shaft gear that drives the distributor. The distributor is driven by this gear, and the oil pump is driven by the gear down here. and you can see the oil pump shaft right there. Now in order to get this Hall sensor out, you have to remove the shaft with the shutter wheel. So first thing to do is to punch this pin out. You can see it's a bigger end here and a small end here, so we're going to drive it in that direction. And you want to make sure that you don't lose the orientation, although it's not as important on this one here, as long as you index it correctly again down in the block, because this is centered on the Vanagons where the drive is offset. If you get it 180 out, you're going to have problems. So on this one, it's not a real issue. Using an appropriate punch, you then just tap this pin out. Be easier with two people. It's already moving. So here's the pin. You can see it's a little flared on the big end. If the drive gear won't come off, do the same thing, just hit the shaft. Drive gear. And there might be some washers here, so be careful. Keep track of things as they come apart. No washer here, and even I don't think this will fit the other way, but again, keep track of how things come apart. Makes life more easy for you putting it back together. That's the shaft with the shutter wheel. You can see 4 windows, 4 spark plugs. There is a little shim here. Keep track of things. If the shaft is a bit rusty, you can clean it up a little bit with emery cloth. There should be a little felt pocket in here. I don't see, oh actually there it is. And that absorbs a little bit of oil. It's actually all broken in pieces here. Later on, we're going to put a little bit of oil in here to keep these bushings. There's a bushing here and a bushing there. That's the other thing that you can check. Excessive play. Just hold the shaft out and try to wiggle it. It's just like checking valve guide play. This one's nice and solid, so we're not going to have any issues with that. These bushings can be replaced if need be. Nowadays though, you know, all that trouble, you can just even get a new distributor. Yes, it might be a little bit more expensive, but at least it saves you time and effort taking things apart and replacing stuff. Hall sensor is held in by 3 little screws. Sometimes there's a pin here depending on the application, a plastic pin that you have to remove, otherwise the Hall sensor just slides out. Now's a good time to clean it. Use some brake clean. O-ring here is usually good to reuse, otherwise you have to get a new one if it looks broken or deteriorated. So we just clean up this housing. Once the new sensor gets here, we'll put it all back together. Alright, I'll be right there. One, two, three. There's another one here. Doesn't, you can see there's no threads in here. Don't worry about that one. Just put a little bit of oil on the shaft. Put a drop of oil in there as well. Just APL. If you don't need APL, you can put oil in, regular engine oil, just to lubricate the shaft a little bit. Lubricate the O-ring a little bit. Don't forget which way this was sitting, and the rotor was pointing at number 1, even though the well, number 1 is over here, but it was number 4. So don't get confused. The oil pump drive needs to sit somewhat horizontal to mesh up. As you lower the distributor in, it will rotate slightly and mesh. Make sure it sits flush. Line up with the notch. The clamp and bolt. Don't tighten it fully because you're going to rotate the distributor a little bit to adjust timing. Good time to check the resistance of the rotor, make sure the cap is okay. No moisture in the cap. Snug the distributor just a little bit so it won't turn easily. Reconnect the Hall sensor. Reconnect the coil wire. And she should start. I charged the battery as well, so should crank nicely. If it doesn't start, then somebody changed these wires around, but it should. So we're going to let it warm up a little bit and then check the timing and adjust it. But faulty Hall sensor.